Truth on my blade, every line's exploded. You swing your words, I counter with precision. Battle of reason, this is my mission. Raise your fist, let them know. No. Raise your voice, let it blow. Woo! We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. Yeah. No fear, no chain, no treason. Woo! We clash our swords of reason. Woo! We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. Yeah. No fear, no chain, no treason. Woo! We clash our swords of reason.
Welcome everybody to Swords of Reason right here on the SpeakeaZy show, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and this is where logic meets passion. Today's debate prompt: should we allow the death penalty as a punishment? And today's debaters, for the affirmative, we have Wrath of Reason, who is a frequent debate panel visitor and does have a channel right here on YouTube that I'm sure with your support in the chat, he will start posting more often, all right? And for the negative, we have Abe Dinkus, who also has a channel right here on YouTube, who's known for his discussions on hot topics, politics, and debating. So whenever you're ready, Wrath of Reason, I will start the timer up with your voice, and thank you both for being here.
All right, cool. Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Easy. First off, just to Abe, thanks for coming in. Thanks for doing the debate. We're gonna kick this off. Let's just go straight at it. So, capital punishment is an essential tool for deterring and punishing those who commit the most heinous crimes and acts and legal violence against any American citizen or citizen of the world. It's a way for the families and victims of the heinous crime to have the closure to an issue they did not create. The justice system is not perfect at all times, absolutely not. But the burden put on society for the chance of those people to commit another crime, or just having the closure for the families, knowing that the animal's still not alive and out in that world, outweighs the risks of the conviction. With that being said, I'm not saying anyone suspected of the crime should be put to death, but anyone undoubtedly convicted of a crime of extreme harm to a child, prolonged cases of rape, or conviction of murder. Anyone who takes another person's life should face the punishment. And all kind of like studies show, I believe it's 4% of all people put to the death since 1973, a 4% chance that they were wrong. And that's dating back into the 70s, right? When we didn't have any kind of technology or anything we had no DNA testing. The technology has advanced a lot. So really, with the technology we have nowadays, you probably get that down to a 1% chance. And in my mind, a 1% chance to free the minds of the victims and the families of those closures, to prevent those people from creating any other kind of heinous crime themselves. Like they're still going to be in jail. They're still around other inmates. They could create violent acts against them. They could take an innocent guard's life. And basically the burden we have to pay for these people to sit there on death row. We got to feed them. And they've already taken the life or done a heinous crime towards other people, right? Another point is basically, these people can recommit crime after they're still in the jail. They can, like I said, take it out on jail guards, other inmates. There's chances of the system actually breaking down, and it's absolutely happened in the past, where these people have just been released into the world and then recommitted these crimes again. So now there's people's lives being lost because of these creations and these flaws in the system, and they can also escape at the same time. If they escape, there they are out doing these crimes again, and innocent lives are being taken. In the closing, in my perspective, anyone who can perform a heinous crime, you're not a human. You have no morals. You have no conscience. In my mind, you have no feelings for others. So if you are convicted of the crime, said crime, Las Vela. And I'll pass my time over to Abe.
Alrighty, thank you for that opening, Wrath of Reason. And with that, we're going to hand the mic over to Abe Dinkus for your opening statement. And whenever you're ready, I will start the timer up with your voice.
All right. Well, thank you, Wrath, for coming out to debate this topic tonight, and thank you, Easy, for hosting it. All right. Well, good evening to you, chat. In the next few minutes, my opposition is going to stand before you and try to sell you the oldest, bloodiest fairy tale in the book. That the only way to answer a murder is with another murder. Only this time, we put on nicer suits, call it justice, and pretend the state's hands are clean. They're going to thunder about retribution, wave the flag of an eye for an eye, and tell you that strapping a human being to a table and pumping poison into his veins somehow makes us good guys. Let's not waste a second on the theatrics. Let's look at what they're actually asking you to sign off on. First, they'll claim the death penalty deters crime. It does not. Not once, not ever. The National Academy of Sciences, the American Society of Criminology, decades of peer-reviewed research. Every serious study concludes there is zero credible evidence that the death penalty stops murderers any more than life without parole. Murder rates in states that execute and states that don't, statistically identical. Countries that abolish it decades ago, their murder rates went down, not up. The deterrent argument is a ghost story we tell ourselves because it feels good to believe vengeance works. It doesn't. Second, they'll whisper that it's cheaper. That's a flat-out lie. A death penalty case costs taxpayers 2, 3, sometimes even 10 times more than locking them up forever. Why? Because when the state wants to kill, we at least pretend to care about getting it right. That means automatic appeals, 2 trials instead of 1, decades of litigation. California spent $4 billion on its death system since 1978 and executed exactly 13 people. That's over $300 million per execution. For that price, we could have built schools, hired detectives, or funded victim services that actually prevent crime. Instead, we bought a theater of vengeance that bankrupts the rest of justice. Third, he will swear up and down the system is flawless. We only execute the guilty, or at least he'll equivocate. Tell that to Cameron Todd Willingham, burned alive by the state of Texas for killing his daughters in a fire that modern science now says was an accident. Tell that to Carlos de Luna, executed in 1989, while the real killer, another Carlos, bragged about getting away with it. Tell that to the 200 men and women since 1973 who were sentenced to die and then exonerated, some just days before the needle. Some weren't so lucky. We know their names now. The state called them acceptable losses. I call them proof that irreversible punishment and human justice cannot coexist. Fourth, he'll say it brings closure to victims and families. Ask those families. Many will tell you the exact opposite. 25, 30 years of appeals. Headlines every time a new execution date is set. The wounds ripped open over and over again. Life without parole is signed, sealed, and done the day the jury comes back. No more courtrooms, no more media circus, real closure, not the Hollywood version. And finally, listen closely, they'll dress it up as morality. But when the state kills, it does not do it in your name as a healer, it does it in your name as an accomplice. Every botched execution, Albert Greenwood's 29-minute choking in Alabama, Clayton Lockett writhing for 43 minutes in Oklahoma, Joseph Wood gasping 640 times over 2 hours. Every one of those horrors happened because we told the government it's okay to play God as long as it wears a badge. This is not about being soft on monsters. The worst human beings on earth can and should rot in a concrete box for every remaining day they have. Looked at by guards, forgotten by the world, alive only to contemplate what they stole from their victims. That is punishment. That is certainty. That is justice without hypocrisy. We do not need to become killers to prove we hate killing. We do not need to gamble with innocent lives to prove we value the guilty ones lost. And we do not need a broken, biased, bankrupt machine to tell victims' families that their pain matters. The death penalty is not justice. It is the state's longest-running experiment in revenge, and the evidence is in. The experiment has failed. We can protect society, we can punish the guilty, we can honor the dead, and we can still be the kind of people who refuse to answer blood with more blood. That is not weakness, that is the only victory that actually looks like civilization. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that opening statement, Abe. And with that, we're going to get into the 5-minute uninterrupted rebuttals. So we're going to hand the mic back to Wrath of Reason. So, Wrath of Reason, whenever you're ready for your uninterrupted rebuttal, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
Excellent. Sounds good. Thanks, Ed. So now we're going into a moral stance and turning this into how are we making the government God? Are the murderers' hands clean? Did that person not know what they were doing when they convicted that crime? Now, for the cost part of this whole thing, I do hear this, the pushing out of cases and 2 trials and going to layers. Now, is that a system flaw, or is that the person or the punishment's fault? I believe it's a system flaw. When you have the inevitable proof in front of you, it should not be allowed to be prolonged and pulled out. If you have the undeniable proof that this person has committed that action and that crime and is it a heinous crime, they don't deserve to take another breath. They don't have any right to be able to sit there and take up a cell or even have the time to think. They should be put to death. They should be hand on hand, do to one in which you do to others, and an eye for an eye. You can contest the eye for an eye, but I believe it is something that is morally true. What else did we go here? And really, is it gambling with the percentage of? So when you said the 200, that is the 4% that I brought up previously. And most of those crimes are actually the ones that were acquitted. I would say, I think it was 61% of them were before the year 1990, when we had any kind of forensics and the technology that we have nowadays. And like I said, you could probably reduce that number to well under 1% of unjust crimes of conviction. So now, with that being said, I know everybody goes back to this, but do you support gun laws? Do you want us to take people's gun rates away for the minimal cause and the minimal lives that may be lost because people have guns? It goes back to that exact same argument. I just can't see. I see the outlying risk larger than the punishment. So With that, I'll hand my time over to Abe.
All right. Thank you for that rebuttal. And with that, we're going to give the mic back to Abe. And Abe, whenever you're ready for your uninterrupted rebuttal, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
Okay. So I would say in his opening, also in his rebuttal, he makes reference to the eye for an eye, but there's that saying, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. I don't think that we want to go down a route that leaves us with very ineffective means of punishment. I think people will fear greater to live in wallowing anguish for the rest of their days than they will being put to a swift death. Um, it strikes me as odd that you take that stance, because and then you equivocate it by trying to bring in like the what about the gun laws? If we're going to do one thing this way, then should we do this thing that way? And you even brought up that there is that a system flaw. Well, if it is a system flaw, the fact that it is a system that can be flawed is a problem when it comes to human life. If we are dictating whether or not someone ought live or die, I'd like to know how, as human beings, we can make a flawless system. I don't think it's possible. Also, I would direct the chat as well as Wrath of Reason to Blackstone's Law, and it's based on the Sodom and Gomorrah story. And what we see is that it is better for 10 guilty men to get away than one innocent man be put to death. This is why, biblically, Lot asks if he can find one righteous man. Well, he starts with a huger number, right? And then when it comes to the U.S., it went from 10, and they said it is better that 100 guilty men get away than one innocent man suffer. You see, I think that a system that is willing to say it's an acceptable loss if one innocent dies, so long as we catch all the others. At what point do you have any public trust in that system? If the system could say, well, it's acceptable to lose one innocent person so long as we get the others that are guilty, well, then every innocent person also has to wonder, will I be the one picked up today and put to death illegitimately? And yeah, I think that's it. That's all I got for now.
All right. Thank you for that uninterrupted rebuttal. And with that, we're going to move it over to the hour of open floor for back and forth. Whenever you guys are ready for the open floor, I will start the timer up with whoever wants to start it off. And again, thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Perfect. We may as well kick her off. I just kind of keep on to touch back on this the system and how it is flawed. So of course, you're always going to have a system that's not perfect. Every system's not perfect, but we already put our trust into that system every day of our life to be correct. And not everybody in a federal prison right now is convicted of that crime either. I understand that their punishment's not death, but for a rare statistic of 1%, I mean, and you could possibly even get that down to 0 if you change the system into the correct ways, where there has to be a burden of proof. Let's say a video forensics, there has to be that 100% burden for the death penalty to be instantly committed. And that would probably take away most of that how do we say that? The cost of the retrials and the dismissals and it shouldn't happen. If there's undeniable proof that you are, let's just get the deed done.
Well, doesn't that look? Well, first of all, you say when a system that we already put our trust in, then we should utilize that system, right? I would ask, don't we dictate what that system can and cannot do, and then we put our trust in the things that we've dictated it can and cannot do?
Yeah, absolutely, we do. Yep.
Okay, so if that's the case, then why would we accept and give them the power to take the life of the citizens within the United States if we've dictated that it is meant to protect and defend those very citizens?
At the same time, you're also defending and protecting your citizens if you go through with the death penalty as well, right? So it can kind of go both ways.
How is
I've already
putting someone...
depicted they could harm another guard. They can harm an inmate while they're in these correction facilities. They can still do harm to the world.
Well, they can
Right?
do... There's a possibility of harm within a penitentiary. There isn't the same harm as they post outside of that penitentiary. I know that there are plenty of ways, once incarcerated, to keep that person from having any real human interaction. Like, they could feed them through slots. They can... I mean, there's plenty of ways where they don't even have access to other human beings. So you say that, but that's an easy fix compared to and you even brought up escape, which I don't know the last time that an inmate that's on death row escaped. I don't think that that's even feasible these
I
days.
believe that was, I read a case, I believe it was in the 80s. So it's been a long time, right? So it hasn't happened anytime recently.
So why let's see, so you would rather put them to death than have a chance that they may harm another prisoner or a guard?
I'd just rather have them put to death and just not breathing anymore. There's no reason for somebody who's sick and heinous and not right in the mind. There's no reason for that person to be even a part of the society and even have the chance to speak to another person. They've taken the life of another. Why shouldn't the same be done to them?
Well, what's the dictation, do you think, for the death penalty? What dictates whether or not somebody could receive the death penalty as a punishment?
It has to be an absolute heinous crime. So, like I stated in the opening statement there, murder of another person that is absolutely convicted, sexual or any kind of extreme acts to a child. We'll put it that way for TOS reasons. And anyone in a prolonged rape situation, so a kidnapping in a prolonged area of time.
So what happens when a more liberal area arrests somebody who takes the life of somebody who is currently doing something heinous to their family, and that person then gets put on death row?
So, that would probably fall under the self-defense laws, wouldn't it?
It depends on the state. It depends on... There's plenty of states that don't even have castle doctrine or stand your ground laws. So if they don't, and then somebody's doing something heinous to your family, and your only option to stop that person is to take their life, and then that state says, well, guess what? That's an unjustified taking of a human life. You didn't even have the right to take their life. Now you are tried as a murder suspect, and you get put to death for protecting your family. And that is completely possible and viable in the country we currently live in.
It is, but it isn't. So, like, the system that I'm looking at is something like a heinous murder isn't like a self-defense. You know what I mean? In those where there's that wishy-wash line of it, it has to be a heinous murder. Your first-degree murder. You're going out. You're off in that person.
Well, tell me how that's not
premeditated.
Well, tell me how it's not
Premeditated, right there.
Well, if you end the life of somebody who's doing something heinous, you definitely intend to do that thing. You did it with the intention of taking that life. You fit the bill for what they would call, because that person wasn't taking the life of anyone. They were just doing a heinous crime, and you saw fit to take the life of that person.
Yeah,
you see,
and like I said, that would mostly there shouldn't be a wishy-washy system within the country where the self-defense laws come into play. Like, we're going through that in Canada right now, right? Because we're trying to fight the whole thing. If a burglar breaks into your house and you do anything to them, you're held liable for the charges. If it's a self-defense law, it should be black and white. There should be no into the murder, sexual acts with children, anything of that type of sort. So it's within the system that it needs to be molded and crowned to fit the penalty itself as well, right?
So, okay, for instance, what you're saying currently is we would need to overhaul the entirety of the system in order to do the thing which we're already doing in a flawed manner.
I think the system needs an overhaul in itself already. There shouldn't. excuse me. Like the self-defense laws, that's the one that always gets me. I just don't understand how we're so separated that as a country, and how you have different states and provinces that see it differently. It's just it's a systematic flaw.
Yeah, but
1,000%.
wouldn't you agree that if there's a chance that any innocent person, or even a person that's committed to self-defense and protecting their family, or just an innocent bystander, could be put to death, don't you think that that system should not have the death penalty?
Yeah, and that's why I believe, like in my opening statement, it's only for these few set crimes that have been committed, like a premeditated murder. You're going out and you're gonna go pew pew somebody,
What?
right?
Why do you think that the death penalty cases that we have currently, right, that we've seen throughout the last decade, or even more, 20, 30, 40 years, why do you think most of those trials took us decade or more to even get people into the seat or into death row?
Because in my mind, it's the system's flawed. Because you're allowing people's feeling, they're allowing these people to push that system through. They know how the justice system works. They can use little loopholes within the system to keep pushing that thing out farther and farther and farther. And the lawyers know how to do it, and they've known it for many and many years, and that's how they keep getting away with pushing these trials out longer and longer and longer.
Sure, but don't you think if the state had all of the evidence and an ironclad case where there was no ifs, ands, or buts, visual data, DNA evidence, that they could put that person on trial and have it done with? They wouldn't
They
have
do, but
grounds
they
to push
still
it out
have the
over and
exact.
over.
They still do it. They still constantly do it, no matter how much proof you have against somebody. There's always these little loopholes they find in the system that can always push it out longer and longer. And that's where, if there is equivocal evidence that 100% you're done, as soon as that gavel hits, you should be walking into the back and get it done with.
Well, so like they have the automatic appeals and all of those things, but beyond the automatic appeals process and all of those, the judge is the one who grants that, right? The judge is the one who's going to grant the stay or the longer period of time for them to gather more intelligence or data in order to fight back against the state. My question would be, how would the judge give more time if there's ironclad evidence? If there was video evidence of the action actually being taken, and DNA and everything else, then that judge isn't going to grant.
But they
an
still
extension
have.
of the case.
They still have. They still do. And it's
And why
all
is
over the
that?
justice system. It's the broken system that allows people's feelings to come into a court case. And it's been happening over the last 20 to 30 years. It's been getting worse and worse and worse progressively. The government has allowed people's personal feelings and their bias to come into the courtrooms and judicial system, which should never be allowed. And it's in our constitution that it shouldn't be.
But it is happening.
It is, and the government's
And, like,
allowing it.
So,
Well, previous government was allowing it, I should say.
so by keeping the death penalty, we're allowing that system to continue to function the way that it does. We're also costing ourselves up to and including $300 million per person who we're going to put to death because of the drawn out caseload, because of the lack of just doing the deed. And then on top of that, the process at the end where it costs a bunch of money to put that all into process. So like, if we have a flawed system that doesn't function the way that it's supposed to, we have a legal system and a judicial system that aren't functioning like they're supposed to, and it's costing the American people millions of dollars per person on death row in order to do it, when we could literally cut that cost down to tens of thousands over the lifetime of the person to keep them incarcerated, why would we do that?
Morality. And why should we just sit here and live with a broken system when we know it's broken? Why not fix the system?
What morality?
Just the morality of an eye for an eye. Like, even if we take morality out of it, why would we just sit here and live with a broken system and just say, hey, you know what? Instead of fixing the system, let's just put a Band-Aid on it and just slap her back out there, kid.
Can you tell me which system isn't broken? Which legal and judicial system in the world we live in today is not broken, does not have flaws, does not have issues?
Everything's got flaws, but like I said, over the last 30 to 40 years, everything's been wish-washed into this. People's feelings and their biases are allowed into the courtrooms and political reasons and schooling, and like why we're allowing it is one of the huge problems of society.
Sure,
Is not standing up and going against these things and just sitting back quietly in the corner, just saying, "Okay, we'll just go with it again."
Right. It seems to me that you're saying, yes, the system's broken. Yes, there's not actually a system anywhere in the world that functions. And even if we fix the system, it's still going to have flaws and not function quite the way we want it to, but we should still have the death penalty, even though it doesn't work now, and the system will inevitably be flawed no matter what.
I wouldn't say it doesn't work now. A 1% or a 4% bad chance is that's not a non-functioning system to me. It just says that it's flawed.
A 4%?
Yeah.
That would be 4 people in every 100 are innocent people that we're putting to death.
And it probably happens with people sentenced to life right now. I bet you if we looked it up, the rates would be even higher.
Okay, so to me that just sounds like immorality, not morality. You're saying I'm willing to trade innocent lives to make sure that the guilty are punished.
Of the heinous crimes that I'm directing towards, yes.
You're willing to sacrifice innocent lives to make sure people who commit heinous crimes are punished.
It's not the innocent lives that I'm looking at. It's the other way around.
Well, you have to look at the innocent lives.
You do, but it's always going to be. There's always going to be casualties of anything, right?
No.
There's not casualties to having a car, owning guns, going to war. There's casualties to absolutely everything.
Right.
There's a negative side with
those
casualties.
Are not. Can you explain to me how those things correlate to being arrested for a crime and incarcerated? How a right to own something is equivocal to being arrested for doing wrong?
Because the chance of you accidentally doing something, even with that thing that you right to own, is still there, probable. You could accidentally shoot somebody and kill them. You could drive into somebody and kill them in your car. It's a casualty. It's a risk that you take in owning that or having that.
That's a completely different thing. That's like saying because people drive cars and there's a chance of them committing violence with that vehicle, I'm going to have to take your wife's life, like my wife's life. Like the police saying, "Oh, we're going to come to your house and we're going to put your wife down because people might crash their cars and hurt other people." Like how does
I'm just saying it's a downside of having these things. And the death penalty is just the chance of is very unlikely of which a wrongful case and nowadays would ever happen, right?
Yeah, but you're making a connection, right? You're saying like because people own tools that can do damage to other people, it's like the fact that the justice system might catch the wrong people and put them to death. Like there's a huge disconnect there. Because all of society can choose to use things the way they shouldn't be used, I don't think that overlays onto the justice system being flawed and making mistakes at a 4% rate when it comes to the ending of human life.
Yeah.
Is there a logical connection there that I'm missing?
No, I guess not. I'll pull back on that statement. That's no problem. But if there is, so let's move along to why it would be so wrong. If there is 100% undeniable proof that this person has committed that crime, what is wrong with the death penalty at that moment?
Well, first of all, who gets to decide who lives and dies?
Let's say there's a video.
Why?
There's a video. You watch it. There's a guy on the bus, there's a nice blonde lady sitting on a bus. The guy walks up behind her, stabs her in the throat, and walks away.
Yeah, you put him in a cement box for the rest of his life.
Why does that man deserve to breathe?
What difference does it make if he's alive or dead?
in my mind, it's right there. It comes down to just a personal moral justification, or
Vengeance. You want vengeance.
I wouldn't call it vengeance, but I honestly don't see anything wrong with it. If you are the ones that commit that crime and you can be taken out of this world to never be able to do that crime again, so be it.
But you could
I
be
just
locked in
don't
a
see it.
cement box for the rest of your life and not have the ability to do the same thing. So how does ending the life, how is ending a human life rather than putting them in a box more moral? Which I don't. I'm
How
trying
is
to make
putting
a connection
somebody
here.
in a box and keeping them alive for 30 years, never able to talk to somebody, how is that moral?
Well, they committed a crime. They took a
Yeah.
human life, and so now they don't get to be around humans.
And if you put them to death, they could be around no humans.
Well, sure, but you're also ending their life. You're not giving them any chance at anything else in the rest of that time. You're ending their life prematurely. And I understand where you're coming from, saying because they've ended a life prematurely, their life should be ended prematurely. But that is only you looking for blood because
Okay.
other blood has been spilled. And I don't know by which metric can you say this thing is more moral than this thing when it comes to putting somebody in a box for the rest of their life or taking their life from them permanently.
All right. So now let's shift a little bit off just the murder part of this, or the killing part of this. So let's move into like the heinous acts against a child, or the kidnapping and enslaving of a certain person, and let's go from there. So now that person is a victim, and you don't think that that person's not sitting at home every day of their life, sitting there thinking, this man is still out there. He's still somewhere out there. It doesn't matter if he's locked in a cell. There's a chance that that man could get out. And justify it in their mind, once that deed is done, there's no chance for the boogeyman to come back.
So you think it would be better for that person to be tried repeatedly over the course of 30, 40 years before they ever
No.
get put to death, and the person who suffered gets to see that on the news, that person's name spread all over the place, and then the chance that copycats come out and do the same thing, which has happened multiple times over the last 40 years, where somebody is arrested and put on death row, and then people go and emulate the exact crimes that they committed because it's now on the television, on the news, and people are talking about it. You think that's better? You think that's better than locking that person up and putting their name out of the system? Nobody talks about it. They're just gone in a box for the rest of their life. You think that dragging
the
the
equivocal
person
part of
through
that
blood,
system, dragging through the system, that's going to happen no matter what, either which way. If you're with that serious of a case, it's going to go just as long in court as the death penalty anyways, no matter what,
you
right?
think
If it's
no,
that type of a case.
no. If they've been found guilty,
In which where the system is flawed now, so we're back to the flawed system.
well, they
There should be no
sensationalize. That's the
chance. They
problem.
shouldn't, as long as, if there's irrefutable proof, say they have the DNA, they have irrefusable proof that that person has committed that crime, then they should be put to death, and that would relieve that person, that child's mind that has to sit there and live knowing that that person is still in this world.
Well, that child won't be a child anymore. They'll be 40 years
Exactly.
old by the time that person's on death row. So
But you don't think that still
entirety
affects
of their
them?
young life has now been dragged through the court cases, the news.
But that's where I'm
talking
saying
about
the
it,
system's flawed. It doesn't need to be dragged through. If there's irrefusable proof that the crime has been committed, that act needs to be done right after. We're not going 20 years down the road.
Well, then at that point, it sounds like your stance is we should not have the death penalty until the system is fixed.
And unless there is irrefutable proof. If there's irrefutable proof that there should be a death penalty. If there's DNA, 10 witnesses, videotapes, if you know that that crime was committed by that person.
What does irrefutable proof look like to you?
So you've got DNA, you've got video,
Mhm.
you've got the trials of very lawful people. So if you've got 2-3 witnesses and the victim,
Great. If I take locks of your hair and I leave it in a place, will it show up that that's your hair if they test it?
see, now you're going down this road. That's where it's questionable. I'm not talking about framing. I'm not talking about the other things of what could happen.
Can I generate video footage
That
of
would
you
be
committing acts
non-irrefutable proof.
without you being there?
Not if me killing someone, no.
How do you know? I can't go online, use AI to make it look like you did this act, and then leave some of your hair at the scene of the crime and
You can
and walk
still
away?
tell where a video came from by the dynamics of where, like, the way it's created. You can go into that video and tell that it's made by an AI.
Not always. And even at that, regardless of that, right? What I'm saying is you say irrefutable proof, and I would say I don't think that line is as clear as you do. I don't think anyone knows where irrefutable is. I would say you would have to be there witnessing it, and at that point you should have stopped it then. I don't think you can have enough evidence for it to be irrefutable unless you witnessed it with your own two eyes.
And what happens when people around it don't stop that act?
Well, at the very least, then you have eyewitness testimony. But
What if they don't want to testify?
welcome to the flawed system that
But what
probably
if there's a
shouldn't be
video?
putting people to death.
You know what I mean? I just, if there is irreversible proof, I just don't see the issue with it. If there is a line that there is possibly a chance no, then maybe not. But that's no reason to abolish the whole system just because there is some kind of irrefutable proof.
Can you outline in some way the rationale that putting them to death is the right choice rather than ending their life without killing them by locking them up? Where's the line? Like, why is one better than other? Why is the ending of the life the right choice and the locking them up not the right choice?
Just for, like I said, morally for the victims, for one. They should not have the right to breathe afterwards.
Right, but if you go and look at testimony from victims, they'll say that it made it worse watching the cases over the course of the years prior. And
But
by the time you get to the end, where they may have already forgiven and moved on, now they're putting someone to death, and they get to have that on their conscience in some way, shape, or form. So,
But the
like,
system shouldn't take 10, 20 years to put somebody to death. It should not.
but it does.
If you're found guilty, it should. Sorry,
But it
adios.
does. But it does. And
Adios.
you're arguing for we should have the death penalty, and the system functions that way currently. So either we don't have the penalty until the system works the way that it ought to, or you just keep doing it with the 4%.
But even if we did
mistake rate.
that, right? Even if we did delay it until the system isn't flawed, we're still not removing the death penalty. So it is still a viable fact. So you're still not taking the topic itself is, should we have the death penalty as a punishment, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, you're still bringing it back at a different point. So it's not abolishing that. That's not abolishing the death penalty, right? You're still bringing it back even once the system's finally fixed.
Well, no, my point would be that we're humans and we are flawed. And by that, any system we create is also going to have flaws, which means you will never design a perfect system that justifies using the death penalty as a punishment.
Like I'm saying, with irrefutable proof, that takes away that element of mistake. If you have a video, I hate bringing it.
In order to do that, then we need a full-blown police state with cameras everywhere to make sure that every single crime is caught.
Well, no, but not everybody's facing the death penalty, right? Only certain ones, like let's say serial killers, you know, child traffickers.
I just okay. So I'm having trouble. I'm having trouble understanding how you justify keeping a system, the death penalty system, in place so long as it can make the mistake of putting innocent people to death, because your federal government literally has a job to protect and defend the people of, or the citizens of, the United States, in this case the United States. And if its job is to protect and defend those people from foreign and domestic threats, and you are that threat, then you have broken your duty to the American people and your failed government at that point. Now public trust is gone, and we're left with a system that's flawed enough that it can kill whoever it wants, whenever it wants, however it wants, and you just justify it because we gave them the right to.
Yeah, with if you take the, like I said, if you take the doubt or liability or any chance of it not being a rightful conviction out, then that percentage would be 0. It wouldn't be 4%.
Right, but you're
Right?
saying irrefutable evidence, right?
Yeah.
I would bet you that in death row cases, the irrefutable proof portion of them is less than 1% compared to the 4% of innocents we're putting to death now. If that is the case,
I would say not to that.
then-
No.
really,
I mean, you've only got 4% of all cases that are going wrong. So it's, yeah, sorry, brain's shutting down here. So you have a gun, fingerprints, you have a victim, you know the person was there. You have, let's say, 3 eyewitnesses saying that they were there. You have all the proof. What's wrong with taking care of it at that point?
well,
What's wrong with it?
would be that's I think that's a fool's errand, because there's any number of things that could be wrong with that situation. They could be false prints. Somebody else could have been holding the gun prior and then they could have used it. Somebody else could have used it. You don't know. The DNA evidence, like I said, could be planted at any time. We've seen this at crimes where things have been planted and then later found out that that was the case.
So these are cases. Okay, so what I'm trying to get at is, if there is a case with 100% irrefutable evidence, what is wrong with the death penalty?
Well, first of all, you're putting a human life to end rather than
To
doing
somebody who's already
justice.
taken justice is taking that person's life, but now we're into whose morals or who thinks what is right. Like, in society over thousands of years since we became a society, the death penalty has been a thing.
I'm still trying to
So-
understand what moral grounding gives you it should be death rather than locked up for life.
What moral grounding do you have that you should be locking somebody in a cage instead of taking their life?
Because you shouldn't be taking human life.
Well, maybe you shouldn't be locking them in a cage. Maybe they shouldn't have the right to breathe once they take another person's life or commit that heinous of a crime.
Do you as a citizen of the United States have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness?
No, I live in Canada. I just
Okay.
get screwed on the daily.
Well, we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you have the right to life, then why does the government supersede your right to life? The one thing that's supposed to protect that right has the ability to take that.
There was a way around this. Once you deliberately take somebody's life or do that heinous of a crime, I don't believe you are now a citizen, and I don't believe you're even human. To commit the kind of acts that we're talking about, like, you would have to be your mind isn't right. You're a sociopath at that point. You are not a human with who deserves any kind of rights.
Again, you're making a leap here, right? Because, like I said before, the state could dictate that you have committed murder even though you were defending an innocent bystander or protecting your own home.
But now you're looping it off to another thing. Like, I'm saying, if there is irrefutable evidence that you are a serial killer, you are a rapist, you are a child trafficker, irrefutable evidence of that. I've never said that we should just, if there's no evidence, then just, ship them off to the old chamber, right?
You've still not explained as the affirmative why it's better to take the life of that person rather than to just put them in a cage for the rest of their life. Like, why is it better?
at the same point, so if we had the justice system that was correct, it wouldn't cost extra money. So what's the point of not doing it? If the justice system was correct and only did it off these few bases, you wouldn't have the drawn out thing and with the money that you were talking about and
But that's my
bring
point.
in that's the drawn out part. So you take that money part out of there. What's wrong with now? It's costing us money to keep these people alive.
We already spend far more than that, and you're saying if the system was better, well, the system's not better, and there's nowhere at all that the system functions better than it does here, and here the 4% mistake rate is happening. So if we're the best and nowhere else is capable, and you're saying we just need to be better than we already are and we're the best, then how exactly do you ever reach what you're stating? Like there,
you take the 4% out by irrefutable evidence. It has to be proven. Like if there's a video,
but that
I'm going to put it up
solve...
again. So we have a video of a lady sitting on a bus. Guy walks up, shanks her.
Yeah.
Should that man have the right to breathe again?
Why is it better to take his life than to put him in a cage?
Why should we even have a drawn out course system like we have? Why should we pay money for that man to stay alive for the rest of his life?
Again, we're already paying 2, 3, and sometimes 10
times. No, we're not.
That.
If the system was correct,
the system is
if
not
we have
correct.
that video showing exactly what happened, why should that man have the right to breathe when he took another person's?
He should be segregated off from all of society, but we don't have the right to take the life of another human being.
He should be segregated, but he's not. He's sitting in a cell right now with a bunch of other people in a wing. He's not sitting by himself. It's not 100% seclusion.
Right? Is there going to be
seclusion?
Is there going to be automatic appeals for him if they're seeking the death penalty? Is there going to be automatic appeal systems because of the way that our justice system currently works? Is there going to be though?
For that, I don't believe. No, I don't think he can get around that one.
I think there's still.
I think his lawyers will try to, right? But
there'll still be appeals. They'll still try to seek insanity of some type. They can do all kinds of routes where they're going to draw this out. And if that is the case, then they're going to charge up more than it would take to just hold him, to just keep him in a cell.
That's where I always say that's where I think a lot of other people's with the same belief that I do is just why even keep him there? Why have him? He shouldn't have the chance to appeal. He shouldn't have a chance to claim insanity. I don't care what your state of mind was at that moment. You just don't walk up to somebody on a bus, slap him with a knife, and then just chant and walk away.
Sure, but as it currently stands, regardless of what we want it to be, it is going to be a drawn-out process. If you want to stop that man from breathing, that process is now years, if not decades out, with all the pay of all the people involved.
Okay, so we fix the system. Everything's good. Once again, death penalty. Why is it wrong? If it's not going to cost extra money at the end, why is the death penalty wrong if you have irrefutable evidence that person did it?
Because human life has value.
No, that person shouldn't. They've already taken one, or they've taken a lot of other people's lives away from them as well. We could say that. Or there's
I would say
people that have to live with that have to sit at home in the mental state knowing that person is still alive and breathing in this world.
See, I don't know.
Let's just say that's a child, right?
I don't know what your founding documents state, but ours says we find these truths to be self-evident, right? And so if they are self-evident truths that we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then you don't actually have the right to take human life of a citizen who's a part of something that has a fundamental truth that you have the right to live. So there has to be some value by which you're saying we can morally supersede what we find to be true by its very nature.
So if you have the right to happiness, what the person that has to know that person's still alive, isn't that taking away from their happiness?
You have the pursuit of happiness, not the right to be happy.
I guess so, right? But
you have the right to pursue happiness, to pursue property, basically. So, but the question is, if we have these rights, and they are self-evident that we have
Not
the right
not the
to
whole world.
life.
Not everybody lives off those rights, but at the same time, it's just I don't know. That's where it's a wishy-washy slope, right? Because it all comes down to your morals and how you feel about that situation, right? So half America thinks it's good, and half America thinks it's bad. So I can't prove to you why not to, and you can't prove to me why, right? So it's kind of one of those topics. It's always going to be a battle forever, right?
I mean, we could take a religious route, but I don't think that you're primarily religious, and I don't think that that's going to help those who are not of a religious ilk. So the question would be, by what standard does one thing good and other thing not as good make? Like, where's that line for you? Why is one thing good and another thing not good? Like, putting to death is good in your scenario. Putting in cage is not as good. And I'm saying putting them in the cage and making them suffer for the rest of their life, so they actually have to think about it, live with it for the rest of their life. They have to reconcile the things that they have done while not having the rights to be out in public, while not having the rights to build a family and build a life and have freedom. Those things are now gone. And they're stuck in a dwelling.
Your mic's roboting, Abe.
Is that better?
There you go.
Yep. Did that fix it? Okay. So if they have to reconcile, or they have to feel the weight of the things that they've done for the next 30, 40, 50, 60 years, whatever it is, how is that not more punishment than cutting it off right there?
Because a lot of the people that commit these crimes don't think they're doing anything wrong. They're just like a complete sociopath. They have no feelings and no compassion for others, right? So they're just going to live life like they don't care. They're just going to live life like jolly. They're in their little cage and be happy in their little play world, right? To them, they're not committing something wrong.
They're going to be happy in their play world, which is a cement box with a toilet and a slot for food.
It could be. Hey man, maybe they're good at daydreaming, right? So, yeah, like a lot of them aren't going to be sitting there thinking about these things for the rest of their lives because they don't have those empathy and those feelings.
Okay.
And that's completely proven that these people are just absolutely, they have no feelings.
I mean, I don't know that that's completely proven. I know that people have mental illnesses and issues, but I don't think that it's proven that they don't have any.
Like complete sociopath. You look at a guy like Charles Manson, right? He had no empathy for what he did.
Something like antisocial personality disorder definitely could be at play for things like this, but again, that still doesn't change the product of why, like, you even if you delete the part of they have to live with what they've done and they have to struggle with themselves in that cell, you're at the very least now still restricting their ability to go out and do what they want to do, to go out and live a life outside of those walls. You've now taken what is valuable to them from them. There's no procreation. There's no going and getting to make the foods they love. There's no, like, you're still denying them the pleasures of life for an extended amount of time, which is still greater suffering than just ending it right now.
I believe, like I said, if the system isn't flawed and everything works, then with the undeniable proof, why even give them the chance to live out those 30 years? Why even give them any chance to have any kind of, maybe they like being in prison for some reason. Why give them even the chance to have that kind of joy? If they've already removed somebody's life or done unspeakable
what does
acts
it benefit
to
us? Like, even if we took that and said, fine, we'll make them work. At least they're going to pay their way for the rest of their time in a prison cell. We're going to slide paper mache in, and they have to build things for the rest of their days. Every single day they have to do it, and if they don't, then they have to, get some other form of punishment. Like, then they have to earn whatever it is that takes to keep them alive for the rest of their life while they're imprisoned. Like,
but then at the same point, you go back to the families and the victims of these things, knowing that that person's still out there. Like, that's one of the that's one of the moral things that I just can't get by. Like, if it's a person who's been through some stuff and having friends that have been through some stuff, just that knowing the act of that person's still out in the world is very traumatic towards them. So why don't they deserve the justice knowing that that person's no longer breathing?
Well, they're not out in the world, and if you convicted them of a life sentence with no chance of parole, then
that doesn't help their mindset.
How?
Because in their mindset, they're still out there. They're still afraid of that boogeyman. They know that that person is still out there. When that life ends, they know that that person is no longer out there.
That person's not out there, though. That person is locked up. And
there's
documentation, and
there may be a minimal chance, but there's always a chance that that person could get out. And that's not going to help that person's mind that's sitting in there that can't sleep for days and weeks on end because they know that that person's still out there, right?
Did you find evidence of that or something when you were looking at people that suffered some kind of catastrophic?
No, I actually know. I know a person that has that problem.
Okay. Well,
they can't sleep at night. They have nightmares every night.
And you think taking a human life is going to cure
for that person?
Trauma,
yes, it would because they know that that person still can't come back and create another harness crime. As much as the minimal chance, maybe 0.0001%, but that still scares that person enough to know that they're still in the world.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but ending a human life doesn't delete the trauma or the thing that person has undergone either. So, like, yeah, you could say they might feel better, although in your case, somebody that feels that way. The other person obviously hasn't been put down, so you can't say what they're going to feel after the fact. You can only
but it's the chance that it can still happen again, knowing that they're still out there.
But that fear is founded on a trauma that exists because of an event, not because the person is still there.
Yeah. But that's where this is where we're taking away from the murder thing, right? So we're talking about heinous crimes.
Sure.
Acts against children, acts against people and their families.
Sure. And I'm not saying that we couldn't do other things. Like, you could make somebody into a eunuch and put them in a freaking jail cell so they'll never feel those feelings ever again, and they're stuck in a prison cell for the rest of their lives. You could even push it beyond that, but at what point? Again, I still don't understand why the life ending is better than a jail cell is. Like,
yeah, and I'm the exact same thing, but I'm the opposite way.
That it was moral. But I don't see a line where one is moral.
Moral, like either way, you have your own morals, right? So it's kind of an unwavering line that you can't cross. So we can sit here and argue. We're just putting our points across, because I don't think any point in any time will there ever be a set way where everybody is one way, right? So,
but if you're saying that, then at that point you're just saying all of our morals are subjective. So we should just do whatever it is the victims that were associated with it want, because it's subjective, and if they want that thing done, then we should do that thing. So,
not necessarily. Everybody's morals are differing, right? And even religious beliefs, each different religious belief has different sets of morals that don't agree. Like, there are, I think it's a matter, I would say most of religious fractions actually are just non-concisive on the death penalty. They don't have an opinion. They don't think it's bad, or they don't think it's good, right? I believe it's like 2 or 3 places around the world that are pro for it, and just some of the minor churches.
I think that there's plenty that believe that death would be deserved, but that doesn't mean that you ought inflict it, right? So, like, you could talk to a whole bunch of people and say, do you think this person would deserve to be put to death? And they'll say yes, but that doesn't mean that we should allow the state to put people to death.
That's where the state, yeah. But if there's undeniable proof and you know it's happened, that's not really the state. That's just a stated fact that it's happened. Right?
Okay, so what's the threshold for undeniable fact that it happened?
You have videotape. You can tell that it has happened. No matter which way you look at it, it has happened. You have videotape. You have 500 witnesses. You have the person sitting in the chair saying that that's the person who did it. There's undeniable proof. So it can exist. Undeniable proof can exist. And it happens 96% of the time, and 4% of the time they're wrong, right? So, which is, I don't really play with that fact because that's just, yeah.
Do you think all people that get the death penalty are unrecoverable in every possible way? That there's no way to rehabilitate somebody as long as they're on death row? They're on death row because they're
depending on the crime.
Period.
Just depending on the crime, right? Do I think, let's put it this way, do I think a pedophile should ever have the chance to even have a right to refute himself? No. You should just be put down like a dog. You're gone. You shouldn't have that second chance. So why would we give somebody with that mental state? And it's proven all over the internet that those people are about 80% chance to redo their punishment, I guess, or sorry, to recommit.
Yeah. Okay. So again, that still doesn't, like, none of it actually shows me why. Okay, they're going to recommit so long as they're able to be in public of some kind, right? Mm-hmm. So you keep them from ever being in public again. And you're saying it's better to put them down.
Yeah. Because either which way, it doesn't really matter. They're either alive or they're not. They're not committed. They're not contributing to society. They're doing nothing but taking up a cell in the prison.
But I feel like you never contended with the fact that innocents are going to be put down. Instead, you jump to a fantasy world where if
there is not a fantasy world when there's undeniable proof. If you have DNA and undeniable proof,
but that's not how it works right now.
That's not how it works right now.
So but it does in some cases. Fantasy world.
That's not in a fantasy
that's how it
world.
Worked.
Does the topic say, is the death penalty good right now? No.
Should we allow the death penalty as a punishment?
Yeah. It doesn't say now. It doesn't say prior, past, or future. It's just saying that, should we allow it? And I'm saying yes, if there's undeniable proof, we should allow it.
I still don't understand why it should be and not jail cells or a desert island, or
because then we're wasting space and our valuable oxygen in the air that they're breathing up. Just get rid of them.
What?
I don't want to breathe my oxygen. Certain types of people.
Well, as it stands right now, I would say, and not just right now, because all of the past, and we don't have access to the future because we can't be in the future. We're here now, but we can access history and record of the past and the current moment. And in both the past and the current moment, we've made mistakes and taken the lives of innocent people in lieu of catching guilty or punishing guilty people. And so long as it's happened in the past and in the present, then it will continue into the future, in my opinion. And I don't think it's worth us putting people to death by our own vain judgment, regardless.
Yeah, but like I'm saying, it's kind of like beating a dead horse here. But in the past and in the future, we didn't go off the basis in an undeniable proof. There has to be 100% undeniable proof that that person has committed that crime.
Right, and like I said, where's the line for undeniable proof? And you say video evidence, but video evidence can be false or faked, and
It really can't at this time, even with the AI. It cannot be. You can tell altered film just by breaking it down and looking at it. Certain people with skills can look in and tell anytime a video or anything has been monitored, you can tell where there's breaks within that
well,
monitoring.
that's in the data, which the data can be changed when doing video of any kind. Like, you could take a very sophisticated coder and make it look like that is traditional normal footage. And the thing I have with this is, like, you keep saying undeniable proof. Well, then that's like 1% or less of all the crimes that happen that are of this nature. And you're saying, yeah, in those cases we should do it, but that doesn't solve for all the rest of the cases that the same exact action is being taken. And so then
But
you're
with
still
a system
breaking,
that works, right?
well, no,
If
then
you
you're
had a
still breaking public trust, because
if
at
you
that
had a
point,
system
you're
that
saying
worked,
if you don't have
what's wrong with the death
irrefutable,
penalty?
well, you're saying if you don't have irrefutable evidence, then the death penalty is not on the table for you. And we're only going to do it for these people over here. So some families get justice and the rest of the people don't get justice because they don't have irrefutable evidence. And by your own metric, that's justice for those families. So
So why not
more
have both
like
options?
98 or 99% are not going to ever get justice. They're just going to have to suffer through.
I wouldn't see it
And then the
that way.
1% that are going to get justice for the crimes that have irrefutable evidence are going to wait. At
They're
this
not going
point,
to wait. If the
I don't.
system was correct, they're not waiting.
You keep saying if the system was correct, but the system has
Mhm.
never been that.
And that's the systematic flaw. That's not the flaw of the punishment, right? That's not the death penalty's fault that the system's not correct.
My
So it
argument is
doesn't
that,
take it away from like what's wrong with the death penalty if
why
it's
do you think we have
100%
all
right.
those safeguards? Why do you think we have all those safeguards that are drawing out all of these punishments? Why do you think those safeguards exist?
Because there is some chances of it being wrong.
Because in our founding documents and in our legal system, we believe that human life has value, and we ought not take human life if there's could be a mistake. And so they're trying to extend that out. So long
Yeah.
as we value human life, why should we be ending human life? And why should the government?
That just brings it back to the irrefutable proof. If there is irrefutable proof, what is wrong with the death penalty? So why not have
What
both?
is wrong with putting them in a jail cell?
Why should they have the right to breathe? Why should the victim's family have to live knowing that that person's still? Why should the victim still know that that person's still breathing and alive? Why are the
it's-
victim's family of people who they killed have to sit there and know that that person's alive? Why should they?
Why should
When
they
that
have
life
to
has
be
been,
offended?
if
Why
they've
should
taken their,
like?
if let's say somebody takes somebody's child's life,
Mhm.
they're caught red-handed. They have the weapon in their hands. The law enforcement shows up. Even the judge is standing there and sees this person off that person. What is wrong with putting that person down?
You're ending human life.
What's wrong with that if he's already taken that chance into his own hands and ended somebody else's?
Well, by our own
He's
documents,
taken that chance for that person to live away. So what's wrong with taking that person's chance of life away?
no, he didn't take their chance of life away. He took their life
Yeah,
away.
sorry, he took their life
They
away.
ended the life of that person.
So what's wrong with taking that person's life?
Well, if it was the person in the moment taking that life in self-defense, it's a lot different, isn't it?
Let's say it wasn't self-defense. Let's say everybody was standing there and watched it happen.
No,
He
I'm
just
saying,
took that person's life.
no, what I'm saying is, if you caught that person and ended them, that would be self-defense and it would be okay. But because you weren't there to stop it, no one was there to stop it, and now you're building a case against that person, then the answer isn't for the state to have the power to put its own citizens to death. The answer is you jail them and make them suffer forever until they pass. You don't give the state the right to kill its own citizens, because That's blood for blood, and you just continue to build a system where it's okay for your state, your government, to take the lives of its own people.
Only in extreme circumstances. We're not giving this out to freaking drug dealers, and
Really?
we're not.
Because we've seen it in other countries, and it's
That's
even been
not
talked
what.
about in ours.
That's not what I'm fighting for, and then that's what the title says: is should we abolish it correctly, or should we just make a system that works for it? Why abolish it correctly if you can make a system that works for it?
Because, again, going back to founding documents, you have the right to life. And
you also have the right to not take other people's lives.
That's not a right. That's a law, and you're supposed to take the duty upon yourself.
So if you have a right to life and somebody takes that away from you, you never had that chance. So the person who took it should be the one that has to pay for that life.
To who? To the state?
Whoever they go to.
Pay your life to the state,
whether they go up or down,
on behalf of the family. Like, I don't.
If there's like I said, if there's undeniable proof of how this has happened, and it has happened, and they are convicted, and they know that person did it, I don't see the issue with it.
Because this is like the most extreme line you could cross for the federal government's actions. You're giving that person chose to end the life
go across those lines and take somebody's life or do those heinous crimes to somebody. They chose to do that act.
Do you not see a difference between the state's actions and people's actions?
But the people's actions would be approving the state to be able to do it, right?
No.
Do the people not vote in their government?
They do, but the state doesn't have the right to supersede all rights of citizens, right? You can't just take all the rights away.
But they're not taking. You're not really taking a right away from somebody who is in that state of mind. I don't think they're even a human. They're not even. They shouldn't even have.
Okay, but that's an opinion you're making, right?
That's a lot of people's thoughts, right? And that's what everybody's opinion is. Your opinion is that there's a 4% chance that this could go wrong, or there's no way we could have an undeniable evidence.
Well, there's multiple reasons, right? For my moral founding, that person is also created in the image of God, and I don't think you should take the life of any other human. I think that vengeance is the Lord's, not mine. But beyond
it's even
that,
written in your Bible that you can take that person's life.
It's written. I'm not going to go there with you, actually.
I know, but it is actually written in there to a certain extent. It's very gray, and that's where the area is. This is always going to be a gray topic for everybody, right?
I mean, I don't think it's morally gray for a huge portion of people because they don't believe it's right to take the life of human beings at all.
I don't know if it's a huge portion. I believe the last time the poll was done, I think it's 56% of North America people believe in the death penalty.
Just over half? I would say that's a pretty big number. Just under half of the people believe that you shouldn't. That's a pretty
exactly
big
right. So it's right there. It's not one swaying one way or the other. So how do you adjust that? Just by going off people's feelings. So why not have both? If you have people's feelings, take those out of the way. So now you have both systems in place, and the only way it can happen is undeniable proof that somebody did those heinous crimes.
Undeniable proof. Again,
like I said, if there's 5 people standing in a room and they watch somebody do it,
I know, but you're going to like
somebody did it.
Most extreme stance for
but there's a chance that
person, and I would say there has to be a standard, right? And if the standard is so excessive, then everyone knows this new standard, and no one does any of that stuff.
Or it just shows right on a videotape somebody walking up and stabbing.
If you don't think that people can just overcome the standard that you're now setting that doesn't currently exist, then I don't know what to tell you.
But like, I'm just gonna throw it out because we only got a few seconds left. The topic isn't whether or not is it right, is it wrong, is should we abolish the death penalty, right? So if the system is right and everything's not flawed, why not? Just because somebody's feelings, right?
All right, that's gonna wrap up the hour of the back and forth, and we're gonna move it over into closing statements. All right. Remember, chat. First off, big shout out to the debaters for coming out last minute and doing this. Excuse me, sorry. And doing this. So make sure you go show the debaters some support, okay? Also, after the closing statements, we're going to get into the 30-minute Q&A. So if you got questions, drop them in the Q&A. We only got a few super chats, so we'll have time for the Q&A. So get some questions in the Q&A because we got 30 minutes for that, and then we're gonna do an hour after panel because I almost forgot I have an appointment in the morning, so I have to go to sleep a little earlier today than I normally do. Yeah, but with that, we're going to get into closing statements. Wrath of Reason, you're going to go first, so that'll give Abe the last word. So, Wrath of Reason, whenever you're ready for your closing statement, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
Okay. Where do I go from here? Once again, shout out to Abe. Yeah, we didn't have much time. Didn't have really any time to prepare for this debate, but here we are. Just coming down to the death penalty. Like I said, it's in the title of whether we should abolish it or not, or if we should have it as a punishment. I believe, and I believe a lot of people believe, that if there is unrefutable proof that that person has committed that crime, just like you can say it in the opposite way, what is wrong with that situation? Is it moral or isn't it moral? But if, depending on which way you stand, you're always going to have a different moral on that situation. Best case scenario, I'd say you leave them both in, and as long as you have undeniable proof that a crime is being committed into that heinous of an act, I don't see why the victims or the family's victims should have to live with the consequences of that person being able to breathe and even have the chance at life when they've already decided to either take somebody's away or shatter theirs for the rest of their life, right? Don't really have much on top of that, so I'll concede my time on over to Abe. And yeah, thanks for coming on out, Abe.
All right, thank you for that closing statement. And with that, we're gonna hand the mic over to Abe. And Abe, whenever you're ready for your closing statement, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
Okay. So I would say that people do things quite often, and it affects us, and we don't always get recompense for the things other people do that affect our lives. I don't think that you balance the scales by taking the life of another person for them taking the life of a different person. I think all you're left with in that case is empty scales, not a balanced scales, just nothing left. I think there's a certain level of slippery slope to taking human life via the state. I would say if you look back at this debate in the beginning, my opponent did say that he felt like it was moral and right to punish that person via the death penalty for what they had committed against the person and the person's family. So I tried to figure out what makes it more moral to take the life of that person, or right to take the life of that person, than to just jail them or house them forever. Again, I went over the costs that we are seeing currently and have in the past seen for these things. And we also have the rate of mistakes being made. And there's definitely very many of them where, again, they didn't find that proof that it wasn't them until after the fact. Some they found right before, and there was a saving grace, but many of them, they found it after the fact. And so you get absolved of the crime, but sorry, you lost your life because the state makes mistakes. I don't think that the state is evil, but I don't think that the state is perfect either. And so, absent a perfect system that doesn't make mistakes in taking the lives of innocents, I can't trust the system to take the lives of any man. And I don't see how a state that's tasked to protect its citizenry should be taking the lives of its citizenry. So, with that, I will give my time back.
All right. Thank you for that closing statement, Abe. If you enjoy what you have seen tonight and you don't want to miss more debates just like this one, all right, make sure you sub up also to the SpeakeaZy channel and make sure you don't miss any more debates just like this.